Hello again and welcome back to Seven Rivers Talk. I'm Bob Burrell. Glad to have all of you with us. We're now into the second segment of this program on national community organizations. My special guest is Joelene Churchill. If you've listened to the first part, you know that this national community organization is better known as Gamaliel. We do have a slide that will come up on the screen here which outlines and shows, illustrates, if you will, the entire profile of Gamaliel and AMOS here in La Crosse and Job and Joshua, how all of these organizations funnel money back into the Chicago organization. And we're concerned, of course, because they are into the churches here and there in many different places in Wisconsin and are siphoning off not only money for Chicago, if you will, but they're also siphoning off the spirit, if you will, of the church itself. And that's one of the reasons that Eileen Churchill is spending so much time here in trying to help all of us understand what is happening with this organization. And speaking of organizations, Gamaliel, AMOS, and so forth, how are they funded? What are some of the sources to which money comes to them?
Okay, funding is a big issue for the national community organizing movement. They receive a lot of money from churches as like an initial sign-up fee to be part of this organization. Then they often will take collections or have like an annual assessment. The dollars given to these organizations are often based on the size and the wealth of churches. I know some groups, some churches on the other side of the state, their churches give $30,000 and $40,000 to the national Chicago community organizing movement. So we're talking about a lot of money here. They receive a lot of funding from the National Catholic Campaign for Human Development. A few years ago, I was just crushed when I learned that the Catholic bishops had given $7.3 million to ACORN. So that is a huge issue with the Campaign for Human Development. In 2009, the bishops of our state had given $247,000 in funding to various groups around Wisconsin. So that is something that Catholics definitely should be tuned in, but all churches should be watching where their dollars are going because they're funding a network that they may not realize the full scope of.
Actually, you know, when you talk about that, you should mention where some of this money has gone from the churches into the Gamaliel or into AMOS or one of these, what do you call grandchild organizations?
Correct. We have, during our workshops, we talk about something called Obama's Apollo Alliance, and this is something that Glenn Beck speaks about often. This is a structure that was developed here in the state of Wisconsin using our tax dollars, but it shows the various levels in the national community organizing movement from President Obama in D.C. down to Chicago, again, down to the Gamaliel Foundation in Chicago.
I don't know if we can get a one shot of this. Go ahead.
Okay. To regional groups such as AMOS here in La Crosse, as well as Jonah up in Eau Claire, as well as Naomi in Wausau. I just received word that they're trying to organize in Dodgeville. Apparently they've taken a bunch of folks down to St. Louis to get training. But one thing that's very important to remember is that acquiring power was a key component of Alinsky's philosophy. Power through organizing, accumulating money and dollars to advance his ultimate agenda.
Speaking of organizations, and what kind of organizations do you recommend for Christians to support in opposition to this?
Okay, well, Christians need to be working towards getting their churches to become Christ-centered, not to become these hyper-political machines, which I think is something that Alinsky definitely envisioned. We need churches promoting the sanctity of life. We've had 500,000 abortions in Wisconsin, and God really can't bless Wisconsin if we kill our most innocent. We need our churches promoting the sanctity of marriage, because marriage is becoming kind of a forgotten virtue in our culture, and the decline in the marriage rate should be of great concern, because marriage is the #1 way of stopping poverty. The statistics just came out that approximately 40% of America's children are born out of wedlock, and this is very alarming to me, and it indicates the breakdown of America's families. So rather than funding the national community organizing movement, churches really should be funding these kinds of programs to build up their local communities and to strengthen families. There are several sources, good sources or several different groups that folks could be supporting here in the state of Wisconsin. I would recommend Pro-Life Wisconsin. I would recommend Wisconsin Family Council. I would recommend Eagle Forum of Wisconsin. I would recommend Wisconsin Capital Watch, WVCY, which is a Christian radio and TV station network throughout the whole entire state. They also broadcast nationally. But it's very important that folks use their money to fund good things that will build up our state and our communities and our families. If you'd like resources as far as organizations to boycott, American Life League has an excellent website listing lots of information about other organizations across the country. The American Family Association is another great resource. They have a program for 1 Million Moms program and a 1 Million Dads program, telling about what our various corporate supporters are supporting. Life Decisions International keeps track of all the corporations that fund Planned Parenthood. STOP is a group that also is dedicated to stopping funding for Planned Parenthood, which is the state's largest abortion provider here in Wisconsin.
You know, I think you're awesome in terms of your being able to rattle off all of these names with hardly any notes at all, which again shows a deep commitment you've got to exposing this kind of program. I'm talking, by the way, to Joelene Churchill, who is a Wonder Woman here in terms of bringing all of us an education and information relative to this organization. The organizations for Christians to support, actually, you go back to the church, and you go back to the primary church's mission, a Christ-like faith, and a mission which, in terms of the sanctity of marriage and in terms of preserving young life, i.e. fetuses through full term and all that, is kind of on the opposite side of where these monies go after channeled through the AMOS, for example. Is that correct?
These organizations do not take a position on moral issues such as life and marriage. Their focus is on promoting more of a big government philosophy, promoting rights for illegal aliens, supporting government-run health care, those kinds of programs. But we need to get back to the basics of making our churches Christ-centered and having our churches take responsibility for the needs of a community rather than developing big government programs. I think if we were to ask America's children, would you prefer to have a married mom and dad in your home or a big bloated government program, young children would say, we want a mom and a dad to come home to at night.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure I'm with them. That'd be kind of nice, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, Joelene Churchill and I'll be back now for the third segment and talking about national community organizations and talking specifically here in Wisconsin about Gamaliel, Wisdom, and right here at home on the Crosse, AMOS. So give us a couple moments, take a quick break. We'll be back in about 30 seconds to a minute.